Working with inventory and warehouse in Business Central, we basically create two interesting kinds of entries, the item ledger entry and the warehouse entries. But we also have the bin content table that is some mixture of the warehouse entry, and I'm going to show you how this works. Normally the item ledger entry applies to documents and to handlings outbound, inbound the house, and the warehouse entry relates to things that happens in the warehouse. And the correlation between those is very important to understand. Let's take a look at those entries in Business Central. From my item 1100, I can drill into my item ledger entry and view the item ledger entry in here. I can see that I have bought 50 pieces and I have sold 3 pieces. Likewise, if I'm looking at my warehouse entries for this item, I can see there's quite many entries and they all have quantities and different unit of measure. Could be different unit of measures, but for only 2 item ledger entries in this scenario, I had many warehouse entries. And the last thing would be the bin content. And if we look at the bin contents, and I'll just filter on the location that I'm looking at, I can see here that we have 4 bin contents. They reflect quantities and unit of measures. So whereas the item ledger entries holds only base unit of measure code, it also holds prices, sales and cost prices, but the warehouse entries and the sum up of warehouse entries and bin contents only holds unit of measures and quantities. Let's look at this in PowerPoint. The entries we saw in Business Central had followed this scenario. We have bought 5 boxes of this item. 1 box equals 10 pieces that is set up on the item card, and we've bought it on a purchase order. This means that we make an item ledger entry of 50 pieces that we add to the inventory. Originally, the remaining quantity would have been 50 pieces. Then we put it away in the warehouse on a bin. It doesn't do anything to the item ledger entries. Then we create a sales order, a shipment, and a pick, and we register and post all of it. And it creates 1 item ledger entry of -3 pieces. So the item ledger entries would always be in base unit of measure. The quantities would always be in base unit of measure. And you can see the remaining quantity is maintained on the old item ledger entries. So an item ledger entries can be modified again and again. The warehouse entries reflects everything that happens in the warehouse, and once the entry is created, it will not be maintained. It doesn't contain any prices, only quantities, unit of measures, and bin codes. That is the core of the warehouse entry. So with the warehouse entry, we want to tell where the item is in the inventory on which bins. Let's run through the scenario here. First of all, we have bought 5 pieces on the purchase order, 50 pieces, but 5 boxes, and it comes into the bin code 80, which is our received bin. But in the warehouse entry, it uses the unit of measure code with 5 boxes, whereas the item ledger entry will be 50 pieces. Secondly, when we make a put away, we take out the 5 boxes again, and we add it to bin code 5002, again in boxes. The next thing that happens will be the sales order pick. While creating the pick, it will automatically suggest 4 lines in this scenario because it needs to break up 1 box on bin code 5002 and put it back on the same bin code in pieces. So it makes a suggestion for a break because I need to pick 3 pieces, and that's what happens afterwards. On the pick, I'm taking 3 from the bin code, adding it to the shipping bin. And last of all, I will sell the 3 for the customer, and that takes out 3, of course. So this will be my warehouse entry flow. If I'm looking at the bin content in this scenario, I can see it will be a sum up of the warehouse entry. So from the item card, when you look at the bin content, it displays how many quantities do you have in which unit of measure on your inventory. So in my scenario here, I will end up with 4 boxes and 7 pieces.